Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
This episode is brought to you by Latin Excellence. Visit latinexcellence.com. That's Latinx, CELLENCE.com or latinxmovement.com to learn more and shop our merchandise. You are excellence. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Luis, and I'm your host. Today, we have a special edition, Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs from September 15th to October 15th every year. It is a time to recognize and celebrate the many contributions, culture, and extensive history of the American Latino community. What started out as just a week-long recognition back in 1968 has grown into an entire month as of 1988. Since then, the month has been celebrated nationwide with festivals, art shows, conferences, community gatherings, and much more. September 15th date is significant because it celebrates the start of a string of Independence Days for several Latin American countries, including Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua on September 15th, Mexico on September 16th, Chile on September 18th, and also includes holidays that recognize Hispanic contributions, such as the Virgin Islands Puerto Rico Friendship Day, which is celebrated in the U.S. Virgin Islands on the second Monday in October. Throughout Hispanic Heritage Month, I'll be highlighting individuals that have made and continue to make a great contribution in their chosen profession and the community at large. Today, we have Joelle Martinez. She's a president and CEO of a great organization, which we're going to talk about, Latino Lead. She's a nationally recognized executive, strategist, speaker, and a facilitator, a visionary, a leader. Joelle dedicates her life to helping cross-sector leaders realize their individual potential, as well as the economic and social opportunities presented by an increasingly diverse population. And if I read her entire bio, we'll probably be here for the length of the whole episode. So I'm going to let her introduce herself. So bienvenida, Joelle. Thank you and welcome.
Well, Luis, thank you so much. And thank you for not reading the whole bio. It exhausts me, honestly, to hear it all. But I'm so glad to be with you today and just to have a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Same here. I appreciate the fact that you took the time because I know your organization and your team have been extremely busy with a lot of the work we're doing, which I definitely want to ask you about. But before we get into everything that you do, can you tell us a bit about your own background, your upbringing, where you were raised and where you come from?
Yeah. So I am a 9th generation Coloradan, and I always start with that because it really explains a lot of which we'll talk about later. So my family, and honestly, we probably went back even further if I continue to explore my indigenous roots on that side. But so 9 generations strong. If you go into northern New Mexico and southern Colorado, you're going to stumble upon some of my family's homestead and some of, where they landed and where they put down roots. And I start with that because that really is the beginning of kind of my story and heritage. Like many Latinos, particularly Latinos of the Southwest, mestizos, we represent many things, and our roots are many things. Mexican ancestry, because this was, Mexico before lines were drawn. Native ancestry, indigenous ancestry, and then of course, the white European ancestry. So also Irish, and even have some French that we've been able to track back to. But I think that those are really important to just explain that, like many Latinos, especially here in the Southwest, we take all bits and pieces of that. One of the things I learned very young as a child is just internally, Latinos, Hispanics, mestizos, Mexicanos, that, not even through our own lens are all things equal. So I remember growing up in the Spanish side of my family being very proud of the Spanish, and at times, kind of putting down, the Mexican roots of the family, and maybe even trying to diminish that. So from an early age and tracing all the way back to the ancestry, it's all of that and so much more.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. It's true. I was born in the Dominican Republic, and there's even within the Dominican Republic, there's so many different types of people, just a wide range, of different color skins, right? Mestizos, mulattoes, and it's just amazing. And then that expands, when you go out into so you got the Caribbean, right? Latin America, Central America.
The diaspora is beautiful and complex and so diverse.
Yeah, you can't put us in a box.
Oh, no, nor should you.
What were some of the most influential people growing up in your family or in school or work?
Yeah. So definitely my family. I was a bit of a unicorn. I grew up in a family that was always kind of servant leadership minded. I thought it was completely normal that on Sunday afternoons during family dinner, that families got around and discussed, social injustice and inequalities and inequities, and then went out and, started registering voters or protesting or, long before social media, started talking to neighbors about problems. So I grew up in a family that was very civic minded, that understood the role of servant leadership. My grandmother on my father's side was the first Latina president of city council. My grandfather on my mom's side was served in the military and served in the Korean War and went on to serve in the VFW. So on both sides of my family, it was just this notion of service and responsibility, that we all have a civil responsibility in order to make things better. Things weren't going to be made better for us. So I was on the front lines and had a front row seat to some of the really big civil rights discussions and conversations that were taking place over the decades. And I learned from the best. So the most influential people in my life were definitely my grandparents on both sides of the family for the service, and for my parents. They were both high school sweethearts. Neither of them had the privilege to get to go to college, and they worked really, really hard to make sure that my brother and I would have an easier, better way of living. And both became very successful in their careers. My father is an entrepreneur and my mom as the leader in the finance industry, where in the 90s, you didn't see many Latinas, growing to the ranks of presidents in those fields. And so I'm inspired every day by my family members, all of whom really have taken on this obligation for service.
Oh, that's impressive. Yeah. So that leadership and service mindset runs in your blood.
I think so. I try to hide from it. I actually was thinking about medical school, which will explain a little bit about the neuroscience we'll talk about later. But at the end of the day, sometimes destiny takes hold, and here we are.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the neuroscience. Did you know at a certain point, okay, I know exactly what I want to major in? Was that something discovered it later, just kind of stumbled upon it, or somehow got exposed to it and then wanted to pursue it?
Yeah, so I studied people and politics. I never studied neuroscience in school. Neuroscience is something I found late in my career, to be honest, really finding ways to be a better leader, a smarter leader, a more authentic and holistic leader. And I had a good friend of mine at the University of Denver introduce me to it, and then I was hooked. And so I've taken classes, I've gone to conferences, I've worked with some of the best neuro scientists and neuro leader practitioners in the country. And, I keep adding to my book collection because there's just so much to learn there.
Yeah. Now, how is that applied in a field, when you're dealing with people, as I'm thinking neuroscience, people, it seems like it's such a smart thing, right? Such a complex topic. How do you apply it on a day-to-day when you're dealing with people?
Yeah. So I'm going to take just a step back real quick to say why it really matters. So when, we haven't really talked about the LLI and leadership, but I mentioned that I've been on the front lines of leadership for a really long time. And if I've seen anything, it's that Latino leaders have this great unique value that they bring to the table. I think one of community and collaboration. I think there is a level of dedication and commitment. I think I don't know many more productive, efficient, scrappy. I mean, we get it done. And so I've always been really curious, the Latino leaders that I've been so fortunate to learn from and to work alongside, we always seem to have this these unique value assets. And what's interesting is when you overlay this, like what those interesting, really special things are about Latino leaderships with what's required out of 21st century leadership, which just happened to be productivity, collaboration, agility, respect. There's all of these kind of things that begin to come in alignment. And when you overlay the two, I like to say that the NeuroLeadership component of it is we're training Latino leaders, but we're also training leaders for the 21st century who just happen to be Latino. So by being able to blend those two, we're giving the best advantage to the folks that we work with.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, that's amazing. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So how would you say that like your Hispanic heritage has influenced you in your career?
So kind of on what we were talking about, Luis, about the great diversity and, just I call us the artichokes because there's so many layers to being Latino, but we're working to get to the heart of it to really understand that. And I would say growing up, it was interesting because I grew up in, a suburban community outside of Denver, middle class, upper middle class, I went to private school. And I remember when I was, I can't remember if I was in high school or a little bit older when Selena first came out, but there was that part in the movie where they're driving and the father's explaining that you got to be more Mexican for the Mexicans and more American for the Americans. And it's exhausting. And I just remember watching that and feeling they're explaining me. They're explaining my experience as what it means to be Latino and Hispanic growing up in this space. And the way that I put that is that I was too much and never enough. And it really depended on which world I was living in. When I was at my affluent, private school, I was either too Latino or not enough of the elite privilege. And I always kind of fit in that gray area. When I was with family or in community, I don't speak Spanish. My family lost the language when they left the San Luis Valley generations ago out of, a need to protect themselves when they were faced with such discrimination. So in some community spaces, I'm not Latino enough because, some of those things, or I'm not Latino enough, because I haven't lived in certain areas, or I'm too white because I'm highly educated, whatever the case is. So when I came into my professional career, I really tried to navigate that space and give a lot of empathy to folks and try to build a bigger understanding about how harmful that really is. When it's bad enough when people put us in boxes and put labels and decide are enough when it's enough, I think it's catastrophic when we're doing the same thing to ourselves and to one another. So I think I definitely brought that experience of like, enough's enough, like whatever that is, enough's enough. And the second experience I would say I brought to the table in my career is that it's not enough to be the only voice at the table. I mean, I was fortunate enough throughout my career to be in the rooms where it mattered. Like Hamilton said, I was in those rooms. I had a voice. I represented, a lot of folks when I was there, but I was usually the only one. So in order for us to really step into power and influence, it has to be many. And so when we get there, we have to open up the door very wide, in fact, knock it down so we can bring many more others along with us. And I think those two experiences, both being invisible or being one of the only, and then also constantly struggling with when's it enough? I think I've brought that into full perspective for me in my career now.
Yeah, it's amazing, like being in that gray area. And, you made me think about when you said being the only one, I feel like it's a common recurring theme that I hear a lot of different places, organizations, and career paths still are very underrepresented. Like in my field, particularly of financial planning, Blacks and Latinos combined are just above 4% of all certified financial planners in the country. And it really doesn't match.
Doesn't match at all.
Yeah, at all, right? The population.
No, I mean, we're going to be 20% of the population. We're nearly 20% of the workforce. In some states, like Colorado, for example, we represent 50% of the workforce replacement over the next 5 years alone.
Wow, that's huge.
So our demographics are huge. They are growing, but yet we are invisible. We're 4% of executive leadership in Fortune 1000 companies. We are only 9% of management positions. So if you think, oh, it's just a C-suite problem, it's not. We're not breaking through at the management level. In elected office, we would have to nearly double it just in Congress, our representation to even get close to parity, even though we've made strides. And in the nonprofit space, where many of our community is served directly through direct services, we are still invisible in leadership positions there as well. And so we have to do something different. But I will tell you, I'm here to kind of challenge what we think is the solution, because people ask me this all the time. Well, what's the real problem here? Of course, systemic barriers, of course, racism, of course, unconscious bias, of course, also, and plus our own mindsets.
Right.
Stereotype threat is real. Imposter syndrome is real. Not understanding our value and our superpower is real. Understanding that they could clear the path for us, Luis. And I really believe this because I've worked with hundreds upon hundreds of Latino professionals across the country. They could clear the path. They could tap us on the shoulder. They could tell us we're great. They could literally hand us the position on a serving platter. And many of us would still count ourselves out. Oftentimes because we fear success more than failure.
Yeah.
And so part of the work we're doing now is to really get Latinos to own their superpower and to stop discounting. Like, we give our power and value away. We discount it constantly. And I think in the world of financial planning and wealth creation, we have to be comfortable with wealth and we have to be comfortable with success, because that's what those positions of power and influence are made of. And so there's work we have to do in addition to fixing some of these systemic barriers.
Yeah. I love that perspective. Yeah, because it's not obviously, and I love the fact that you recognize all these systemic issues, but then still saying, hey, you as an individual, you still have a voice. And I know that for women in particular, that's even worse, right? When those statistics you were saying, like in terms of people in positions of leadership, boardrooms and whatnot, probably even worse for women, right?
We're not even 1%. Latinas like myself are 0.5% of most of those senior leadership positions. I call it, I'm the trifecta. I am Latina. I am much younger than my peers and colleagues that sit in the roles that I do. And I am about 5 foot tall. So in the room where most CEOs, still over 60% of CEOs are white men over 6 feet tall, I don't fit that mold at all. So it is a sense of we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. What are some ways that you navigate that? Because you mentioned like imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and so on. Like, what are some of the ways? I'm guessing that's where the neuroscience comes in, right?
Yeah, mindset. I mean, one is growth mindset, getting out of fixed mindset. I mean, if I'm not willing to put in the work and understand that I'm not here to compare myself to others, I'm here to compare who I was yesterday based on who I want to be tomorrow. It's also about locus of control. Again, we need to change systems and we need to overcome those challenges. But what do I have control over? I have control over my mindset. What's interesting is that there is a connection between identity and neuroscience. So in order to be a confident, effective leader as a Latina, I have to have this connection and understanding of my identity. That's who I am. Over almost 80% of Latinos in the workplace today report that they actually repress part of their identity because they think that that is necessary to get ahead. Every time I say that statistic, I almost feel like crying. It's so painful for me to think about that. But also know I was the statistic too, right? I remember when I was mentored to not wear my hoop earrings, but instead put on pearls. Not to wear big, bold colors or big, bold lipstick or bold nail polish. I remember all of these trainings, and what that was telling me was that who I identified, what I knew I was, that authenticity was not being valued by others. And for the longest time, Louise, I played that game. I would change all of those things so I could fit in. But what we learn in neuroscience and leadership is that confidence, which is critically important, is directly connected to our deep-rooted understanding and appreciation for who we are, our identity. And our identity is critical for establishing what our ambitions are, what we're willing to take on in the world. And so what we're trying to do now is bring all of that together where individuals can really explore this identity piece, understand it, and then own the heck out of it, and then tie that back to this mindset and confidence components so that we can literally put them on a trajectory of significant advancement.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think that identity piece, and going back to what you were saying earlier, like in my case, when I came from the Dominican Republic, I didn't speak English, right? So I had to leave all of my friends behind, right? It was a new school, new country, new language. I just didn't fit in, right? Even with other Dominican kids from New York City because they were born and raised here. And so I remember they used to laugh at me because I didn't know English. I would mispronounce something. And I kind of felt like you were saying, like I really didn't fit in because I was like, right, too Latino in school. But then like when I went back home with my friends, like I was different. It was just weird.
But they'd be like, what American soup are you eating? Yeah.
And then, it's funny because as you then start progressing in your career, then some people kind of look at you like they might, I don't know if it's like they feel like you're leaving them behind or something, or like you're selling out to some degree, right? Because you're acting differently or you're pursuing higher education or the better job, right? And so there's always that internal struggle too. And I feel like maybe that plays into some people's mindsets as to why, maybe subconsciously, perhaps, I don't know. They're scared of success, right?
When did that transition? How old were you?
I was 11, 1991.
So I'm going to tell you something about the neuroscience and identity. And again, this is why we leverage all of this so that we can actually, so when we are in middle school, but those ages of middle school and high school are the most important and influential in forming our identity and understanding our confidence, right? So if we think about our middle school self, which no one really likes their middle school self, so it's really unfortunate for the world that that's when we form most of our identity and confidence. But in our limbic system, where our memories and emotions live, that's where all of that is forming and becoming hardwired. And it's based on our environment. It's based on our cues. It's based on what we're learning in the history books or what we're not. It's based on what we're seeing on TV and what we're not. It's based on the messages we're hearing from our leaders and what we're not. So if we go back in time to our middle school self and we understand that the world around us was very much shaping how we thought about ourselves, how we thought about our value, how we prided ourselves. We have a saying at the LLI that, leadership is both our heritage and our legacy. It's not an either or, and it's not an only then. And so imagine though, if we could get more middle schoolers into a new reality where all of a sudden they saw themselves in leadership positions. Their teachers looked and sounded like them. The stories that they were reading in their literature classes reflected them and their culture. We've come far being able to take my kids to movies like Coco and Encanto. Like we have moved far, but not far enough. And so your middle school self, Louise, you may not know this, but unconsciously plays daily in your life in things like self-doubt, in things like fear, in things like how you tread the waters in the financial industry as maybe one of the only.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to overcome if you don't know how to.
Right. I mean, I don't think that a person without any help or training from somebody like yourself could, maybe obviously they can, but it's going to be really hard. So does that involve like basically retraining your brain to some degree, like rewiring?
Yeah, neuroplasticity. So I'll tell you a little bit. When we started the Latino Leadership Institute 8 years ago, we have one single vision and we're unapologetic about it. Latinos will serve in positions of influence and power across every sector and industry. Just imagine that for a moment. We're no longer the unicorns. We're no longer the exception. That's just the norm. But to get there, as I said, we've got to address these systemic barriers. Those are real. And we need allies and partners and investments that are significant. Don't tell me you believe in DE&I. Show me with your investments and budgets and your personnel, right? There's real motivation. On our end, we have to do the work. We have to get ourselves mentally ready to go. It's go time. And so in order to do that, we've put together a program called Ignite that does all of that, leveraging what we know about neuroplasticity and rewiring our brains. But it starts with identity. We spend the first part of our work together exploring that. For the first time ever, someone may have an identity inventory that they've never put together. They've never pieced together what that means and all the complexities and I call it it's this Latino labyrinth. I mean, it's so many twists and turns and you're not exactly sure how to get your, go through it. But then we also have to deal with these success barriers like confidence gaps and fear of success. And what we do is we train these folks to understand where their memories, emotions, and actions really stem from, and give them some tools and some real applied knowledge of how to begin to change it. And it is baby steps. I'm a work in progress. There are days where I still can't take a compliment. I am awkward. It's not cool. You don't want me to take a compliment because I get all strange even talking about it. But taking a compliment is an active effort that I have to do in order to override those deeply embedded emotions, thoughts, and memories that have long told me either I'm not worthy of the compliment or they're just giving it to me because they feel sorry for me. All those stupid stories I tell myself. And so the practice of taking a compliment is an active thing I have to do to overcome that. So we teach folks through our programming these things so that they can go on and actually bring their full superpower to the table.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it sounds like in your teaching, then, is there a component of behavioral, basically behavioral science to some degree to then move from the learning to then the actual doing?
Yes, but I'm going to tell you a little bit, and everyone listening and watching, is that it's not trained through curriculum. It's trained through social capital and peer-to-peer support. So what you find in anything is oftentimes the best mirrors are your peers or your colleagues, right? They're the sounding boards, they're the mirrors, the magnifying glasses at times to help you see what you're not willing to see. So in the programs that we've developed, we have intentionally built social capital as a key component. So building in success partnership, building in small group work where you can apply this. This is not a solo journey, the work that we're on. What is so special about the LLI in our programming is all of it is designed by Latinos for Latinos. So this is a space where we're not a monolith. We have varied degrees of experience, which we've touched on today. But there are these shared experiences and a shared empathy of the journey that we've been on and the journey ahead that creates such a unique space for us to learn and grow. So the application of the behavioral science comes from this social capital.
Got it. Oh, and you mentioned superpower. So I wanted to ask you, do you have a superpower? So what is it? Or if you could have one, what would it be?
So I have one and I own it every day. And if you talk to anyone that knows me, I will be honest, my superpower is a blessing and a curse. But my superpower is I'm a visionary leader, and I always have been. I see the potential in us as a community, in people, in generating, wealth for our community, and owning power and influence and the good that will come of that. So my superpower is being a visionary. I think I see things before other people. If I could get a superpower, I would. I don't think I sit in the space of celebration often enough. I'm never satisfied. I just want, I accomplish, and then it's like on to the next thing we have to accomplish. And so to temper my superpower, I would really like, I guess it would just be, celebration and just gratitude and appreciation for all that we have accomplished, and just being okay that we're on the journey and not necessarily at our destination yet.
Yeah, I think it's important to celebrate the small wins even.
Yeah.
That's something I've struggled with in the past too. There are things today that I prayed for before, right? And it seemed like such a huge accomplishment at the time when I was pursuing them. And now I just brush them off like they're nothing. Like, oh, anybody can do this.
Yeah.
So I definitely relate to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we set a bad precedence for our team members, for those that are watching us, for our children that are watching us, because it goes back to this enough thing. We keep moving. I'm a big sports person, as you can probably see behind me, but we keep moving the goalposts on ourselves. And instead of celebrating the touchdown, we're just like, no, let's just keep moving it. Let's just keep moving it. And that's not a healthy pattern to get into.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Because then you're always dissatisfied.
Always.
They're short-lived.
And not appreciative of enough. And that's the thing, is you don't want to lose the appreciation of what it took and being able to get to that space in the first place.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
You mentioned wealth. So I wanted to ask you, just going back to your youth, what is like one of your first money memories? What was like your something that stood out to you, or a relationship with money, or something that you kind of saw your parents deal with?
Yeah. Yeah. So my mom she was a teenage mom, as I mentioned, and her first job was a teller of a bank downtown. And, she would drop me off at my great grandparents' house, who really did help my parents raise my brother and I. And she would get on the bus, like so many, and she would go and bus into downtown Denver, and she would go work at this big, powerful black bank in the city of downtown Denver. And that was her job. And I remember feeling so intimidated walking into the bank lobby when I was really little and seeing her. But my mom, because she was in finance, I learned about checkbooks and bank accounts. And I think I had a bank account at a very young age. My mom made it all the way to being a president, and made it then into heading some of the DE&I work for a big enterprise bank. And so I also watched my mom kind of go through this career ladder in finance. But my first memory and understanding the importance of savings, which is critical, because we gain wealth in a couple of ways: home ownership, small business, entrepreneurship, which is why we have an entrepreneurship program too at LLI, and of course, investment, savings, and inheritance, right? Where we can actually multiply our money, the great multiplier. And my grandparents, for Christmas, normal situation would be you'd open up a Cabbage Patch doll, or, the Atari for Christmas. And I would open up savings bonds.
Wow.
That's what they bought me. And it was like a big wah-wah. I'm like, Mom, really? This is what Grandma and Grandpa bought me. But I remember them just telling me, just wait, we're go put this, and they would physically make me deposit those. That was part of the process. And they would buy these savings bonds. And I remember when I was going to LA for college, I went to my mom's branch. She was the bank president at the time. And I got to cash in, 18 years of savings bonds.
Wow, that's amazing.
It paid for books, and it paid, but you think about that. And so what an awesome, and my grandparents did not have any money. My grandfather was a custodian at a high school for his career. My grandmother was a bank teller. So it's not as though they had wealth themselves, but what they were trying to really teach my brother and I is the importance of stretching a dollar, saving a dollar, investing a dollar, and cashing that dollar when you could build bigger returns, which in this case was going off to school and buying books.
Yeah, what a gift.
Totally. So there sits somewhere a safe deposit box with my kids have savings.
That is amazing. Yeah, I think that is such a key thing to be able to do in terms of generational wealth. Like you mentioned, right? You have buying a home, having a small business, and then saving and investing and inheritance, right? And, like in my case, I've shared this sometimes before, where on the inheritance side, like I never used to see growing up, right, anyone get anything. Like every time somebody passed, it was like always having to do a collection before the GoFundMe days, going around trying to get money to help bury them, right? And I remember my grandfather, when he died, he left enough money to be buried with. And to me, like that really stood out because of everything I had seen before. I was like, wow, like that to me, it was just so amazing that he was able to do that. Say, hey, when I'm gone, like you guys don't have to worry about it in terms of the finances. But then I started thinking as I grew up, and like we should go beyond that. Like in your case, being able to have money to pay for school. I mean, just imagine just that small little gift about somebody being able to graduate with no student loan debt. Like today, some people graduate with the equivalent of a mortgage, right?
Or more than. I mean,
Yeah.
it keeps them out of the home buying process because they're paying off debt for 15 years.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. So, you had mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion and telling companies or people like, hey, put your money where your mouth is kind of, or actions behind it, right? So that's one of the things that I'm also very involved with. With 3 colleagues of mine, we created an internship program called BLX Internship for Blacks and Latinos that are students or career changers that want to enter the financial planning profession, because we found there were so many barriers to entry, including getting paid for that internship. So we created a paid internship program.
You mean we can't just do it for free?
Yeah, like, because you were saying, right, like, you made me think about a lot of the times we just give stuff away, and it's maybe because we thankful, maybe because we don't think we belong there in the first place. So we just like, we'll grab the opportunity and like, don't even worry about paying me. That doesn't even come up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting statistic. First of all, thank you for that. We have even an advisory board for our entrepreneurship program. And that is it perpetuates our devaluing of ourselves and our community when we are asked to continually give it away, give our expertise, give our time, give our talent, volunteer it away. I used to get so angry when people would call and say, oh, can you take a quick call with so-and-so and give them some feedback? And I'm like, well, what's the rate? They're willing to pay.
What is your budget?
What is your budget? Tell me. I don't know if you can afford me. But the reality is that it is. And in a lot of times, again, I come from a servant leadership family in our DNA. And so this idea of giving and building and the greater good of the whole versus the individual, all of those can play into the dynamics. I think more of it, though, is that really we've just never owned, and no one's ever showed us, and no one's ever taught us that it's okay to have value, and it's okay to increase that value, and it's okay to demand that value. And so I think what it really comes down to is we don't understand our worth yet.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we have this huge potential gap, is because we discount ourselves. Latinas today still make 57 cents on the dollar. And that's not just bad for society, it's bad for the economy, because we are becoming the breadwinners in the families now, and we're becoming those that are going to college. And so when we make 57 cents on the dollar, we're not coming to financial planning anytime soon.
Right.
Because we're not making enough to even think about savings or making an investment, a return on that investment. And so we have to solve to some of those problems. But here's the thing, it is systemic. And plus, it is also that we're not demanding it. So when a Latina leaves college, and if you asked a white woman and a Latina woman, and then a white male and a Latino, you're going to see gender devaluation, and you're going to see racial ethnic devaluation. And what I mean by that is the man's going to say, the white male is going to say, no, I don't need $1, I need $1.50. And, and the Latino male is going to say, I probably need about 85 cents on the dollar. The white woman is going to be somewhere around that 75 cents on the dollar. If you ask me what I am worth and what I should be making, I'm going to consider, well, I'd be really grateful. I'd really appreciate, I don't know, how does 60 cents sound? And we perpetuate that. So when we ask for salaries, when we negotiate salaries, when we take things, we're very rarely negotiating salaries up, if at all. And a lot of that is, again, we were never taught to, and we don't yet have the mindset that we need to.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I had another guest, Rick Gillis, before. He wrote a book called Leveling the Playing Field.
Yes.
He talked a lot about that.
Yeah.
I learned about him through an event when I was living in Vegas with Alpha, the Association of Latino Professionals for America. And it's amazing how a lot of the times we just take what's offered, right? Even at, hey, here's what we're offering, and people just jump on it. Thank you. With gratitude. Like there's some room in there for negotiation, whether it's benefits, salaries, stock options, whatever it may be. So don't take that for yourself. And even after you get the job, like keep track of your wins.
Track of it. When are you ask for them? Like, so often we think it's just going to come. And if we keep working one day, we're going to be rewarded for it. Well, we don't know as our peers and colleagues when they go up for their reviews, and our reviews are ready for the ask, beyond cost of living raises. And so again, so much of this is newness for a lot of us, and we haven't had mentors. And that's why building programs and building social capital around this journey, our backgrounds aren't the same, but the shared experiences along this journey of navigating this world are so similar that we can provide each other help and support to navigate this. And I think that's what we've been missing for so long. In my opinion, the missing factor has been us being connected to solve some of these pain points for ourselves first.
Yeah, mentorship and community, powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And it's who we are. So why not leverage that?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think so.
That makes a lot of sense. No, this has been great. Thank you. Wanted to ask you some of the fun questions.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite food?
Okay. So for full disclosure, I don't cook at all. I can't cook. That gene that is in my family skipped me for whatever reason. So there is nothing like my mom's green chili. And specifically, again, being in Colorado and being the Southwest, there's a battle of chili. I remember when I moved to LA and I ordered chili and they brought me this burrito with what looked like green salsa, and I did not understand. So very specific to Colorado is our Colorado green chili. But in particular, my mom's, it has been passed down for generations with lots of love. Having the right batch, mija, is always important. My great-grandfather taught her that. And so there's nothing. So I'm going to have to figure out how to get my mom to teach one of my kids how to make this green chili. It cannot be lost because I can't cook.
Gotcha. Do some places in Colorado use those green chilies as well?
Yeah, so Colorado, so there's different types there's Pueblo green chili and Hatch green chili. So there's a constant battle between New Mexico and Colorado.
Got it.
Very unique to the region. So chili here is not like chili you would find in Mexico or even chili you would find in, say Chicago. It is this green chili that is just delicious. So when you're here,
I have a conference in Denver coming up. So
I will tell you what restaurants to go and have this real authentic green chili, because there's no going back once you have it. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles now.
No, I've been there. I tried.
What about music?
Oh gosh, I'm so eclectic with music, right? I will love everything from growing up with the classics like Earth, Wind and Fire and the Eagles. And so really kind of grounded again. I'm this American Latino, but on the Latin side, I love salsa. I love listening to cumbia. I loved and always appreciated Selena for many levels, not only because I really do relate to her experience of navigating the two worlds that she was in, but I thought the way she blended music and sound, bringing in Cruz and kind of her genre of music into kind of this modern. And then I'm a big fan of folks like Bad Bunny and Pitbull too. I think I'm so proud of a new generation that are bringing hip hop and Latin hip hop to the mainstream unapologetically. I just think it's time. Like, let's do this. Pitbull, I did some work with him back in 2008, and he was actually in the back of my car. I was driving, and he was afraid of my driving. But I remember him telling, and this is before he really got big. And, I remember him telling, we had lunch at P.F. Chang's. I remember him telling, like, the future of music is going to come through the work that he and others were doing and I love it. I embrace it and I amplify it as much as possible.
Yeah, he was definitely not lying. But it's amazing, like when you have that eclectic, you're able to go from one to the other, right? Like in the same, like the mixtape just sounds crazy, right? A playlist is like
Yeah.
You can go from Mark Anthony to like, like Dua Lipa, and then Bad Bunny, right? In the same playlist.
It's the same thing. I mean, my running list is ridiculous. I mean, for most people, they would probably be like, "How do you go from Tupac to Bad Bunny?" It's those things, and it's like, I think that just is this is American Latino. And I'm unapologetic about loving all of it. I don't feel like I have to give some of it away to fully embrace the other. And I really hope we can all just feel that comfort of being enough, even with our music.
Embrace that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a necessity in addition to overcoming all the systemic stuff.
For sure. Absolutely.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I'm going to share all of your links in the show notes, but for those listening, where can we find you or the Institute online or social media?
Yeah. So our website is www.latinoslead.org. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We're everywhere. And in fact, I would definitely say our LinkedIn, we put up data, we tell stories, we connect people. It is the best way to get involved. We have, we have two major programs. We have our leadership development program, which is good for Latinos from anywhere across all sectors and industries, regardless of where you are in your career journey. We work with folks in the C-suites all the way, early career and everything in between in that program. We are sector agnostic. And so I would definitely encourage people to go to our website and look up Ignite. We have 2 upcoming public cohort sessions you can register for and get all that training and leadership development that we've been talking about. And because we know that entrepreneurship is one of the ways we can close this wealth gap and really close opportunity gaps, period, we also run a growth stage Latino entrepreneurship program. So if you are an entrepreneur, you've run your business for 3 or more years and you want to grow it, I would definitely look up our LEAP program, because we will open up our next cohort. And again, that's open to Latinos from across the country who are interested in growing their business. And not only are we giving you social and technical capital, but we are opening up pathways to financial capital. We recently partnered with the new Community Transformation Fund, which will grow to be a $50 million fund where we are just going to be investing in Latino and BIPOC-owned businesses.
That's amazing.
So it is critically important.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'll be sure to share those links in the show notes. Question, are any of these programs virtual?
All. So both of them are. So we, again, in the pandemic, we used to do things in person. We still have plenty of social networking and stuff that happens in person. Don't get me wrong. We're a high-touch community. But, the way of the world and be able to expand our reach and grow our impact is let's leverage the virtual nature. So all of our sessions, both in Ignite and LEAP, are virtual. Many of our alumni cohorts and the social capital, they are meeting up in person. We just closed out one Ignite session where we had folks from Miami all the way to Seattle and everywhere in between, and they still connect with their virtual cafecitos every other week.
Nice. So, I love it. Cafecitos.
Just because it's virtual does not mean that we are not creating and cultivating social capital.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I should mention, we did not want financial barriers to ever come into play. So our LEAP program, entrepreneurs do not have to pay to be in the program. And for Ignite, it is less than $700 for the entire leadership development program, which also gives you professional development badge, which is critically important. So just to put that in perspective, it used to cost $3,500 and we rebuilt it so that we could open it up to many more Latinos. That's
amazing. I mean, that is such a low bar to clear, right? I mean, it's an investment in yourself.
It's an investment in yourself, but we didn't want to make that investment count. We get counted out enough. We really wanted to create a space where people can count themselves in as much as possible.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. So one final question. I know you've been super busy, especially with Ignite today. So before I let you go, if you were in an elevator with someone that you'll never see again, and they don't know who you are, so they can't look you up, what are some words of wisdom that you would share with them about anything? Could be career, it could be personal, anything that you've learned that you'd like to just, hey, here's some some jewels that I've learned throughout my life that I would love to just share with you.
People are going to discount you every day. Don't be the one discounting yourself. Know your value, know your worth, own it, live it. Don't let that's something you own. No one gives you that. And so I really think don't discount yourself. People are going to do it enough for you.
Yeah. Wow. Deep.
People say it can be a little bit intimidating and deep, but I do. I mean, what if we really believe that, Luis? What if you really, from today, believe that and you're knew what it was, believed it, never second guessed it again, stop discounting it. And what if we multiplied that? Hundreds of thousands overs of Latinos. That's the change. You see the sign in the background. I think that's the spark we need.
Yeah, that will have such a ripple effect.
Huge ripple effect. Tidal wave.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. I'll definitely be checking out the program as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing all this great information with us. Joelle, it's a pleasure. I love to stay connected. I'll definitely be hitting you up for that local place that I can visit in Denver.
Absolutely. I will share that with you. And just one final note to all your listeners, because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, as you mentioned in the beginning. Critically important month. Let's all work to make it 12 months a year because we have so many stories to tell. We have history, we have culture to celebrate and to educate on. And again, remember, we teach our children. We help our children to understand their worth at a very young age. If we demand our stories to be told, if we celebrate and tell our stories, they will not have to go through what we have had to as adults to rewire and relearn some of that. So my wish for everyone is that this Hispanic Heritage Month becomes Hispanic Heritage Year, and it just becomes the norm of us getting to celebrate our stories, our wins, and coming together as a community.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you have any questions, as always, send an email to luis@onmywaytowealth.com. And stay tuned for just more great guests coming your way for the rest of the month. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation.